Welcome back to the Real Couchwives Podcast, where we overanalyze all things Bravo.
We just watched part 1 of the Vanderpump Rules Season 11 reunion, and while it was pretty lackluster, there's one thing that's for sure, and it's Lala and production, even Andy, had very specific outcomes they wanted to achieve, and we're feeling a little manipulated here.
Yeah, Lala definitely came very much prepared with her agenda, her notes, all ready to take down Katie. And Andy definitely came prepared to do everything in his power to give Tom Sandoval that final hurdle of the redemption arc that he really needed.
Yeah, they're like, let's just put a bow on this. And he just kept being like, nope.
Andy's like, hey Tom, so do you want to address some comments here?
Hey, you wanna make that better for yourself? Maybe this is your chance. And he's like, no, thank you. I feel great.
Let's blame your PR agent. That's the problem here, not you. It's your PR agent.
Yeah, exactly. So those are honestly the biggest things that came away from this reunion. The first episode, honestly, pretty lackluster, I have to say. Not much happened, and I feel like this is what happens when they put it into 3 episodes when it just doesn't need to be 3 episodes.
Yeah.
When did reunions start to be 3 episodes? I feel like the first time it happened was like with the Beverly Hills craze, and they were like 3 episode reunion. Like, this has never been done. This is wild.
Yeah, Beverly Hills, definitely Atlanta. Atlanta's had 4-part reunions before.
Okay.
Sometimes a season warrants it, right? I think a lot of the times it's a little overdone. It's a little unnecessary. You get segments like in this season or this episode where you have let's talk about pump closing. Let's talk about Lala getting pregnant. Let's talk about Lala and Schwartz maybe being in a relationship.
Okay.
Let's talk.
Can we just for one moment?
Yeah.
What?
I know. That, and then even let's talk about Lala and Brock maybe having flirty vibes. It felt like it was the Lala show on this episode.
It was 100% the Lala show. I feel like Lala thought she was the moderator.
She did. It felt like you were listening to her podcast. It was crazy.
Yeah, if there was a poll of how many people, how much people spoke, she would be 90%. She was just she was reacting to every single thing, and it's just girl,
I know.
sit down.
You love the sound of your own voice, don't you?
Truly. And also the big thing that happened between Lala and Katie was literally the last 5 minutes. That was probably one of the biggest things. To set a little bit of context, we do find out during this reunion that Ariana has actually not watched any of the season. I do want to address that before we get into, the other 2 points that we're going to bring up, just because we have all this rage that we have seen, Lala and Scheana turning on her, and she doesn't even know any of that has happened.
Yeah, she doesn't even know what's coming for her. And that's just it. I feel like we got, when that information came out, we got this little look between Scheana and Lala of oh, we're gonna get away with this.
Yeah.
Okay, now it's time to take down Katie. Let's get into it.
Which I think in doing that, they actually shot themselves in the foot, because as Lala is basically attacking Katie for not being honest about her feelings with Ariana, you see Ariana's face, and it's just, she's so upset. And I think she is now putting together what she's going to be seeing in this season, which is that these 2 people are not on your side.
Yeah, that, and also just I can't get over the fact that Ariana didn't watch this. She could have watched a compilation. She could have listened to a podcast.
There's so many TikToks out there.
There's so many TikToks out there. She could have done anything. Taylor Swift goes on the Eras Tour worldwide concert and still finds time to TikToks that people are making. You can't do the same.
I know. I feel similar about that too, honestly. And also it just sucks because we're watching the reunion to see the aftermath of some of these things, right? And we want to see how she feels now that she's seen Lala and she's seen Scheana, and the way that they've been so two-faced. And we're not gonna get to see that. It's, I guess, gonna maybe play out after. It does feel like it's part of their job to watch the show before coming to the reunion. I feel like
at least a little bit, right? Come on, some of those scenes where literally Lala and Scheana were consoling Ariana to her face and then talking behind her back 2 seconds later, those would have been key details for you to get ahead of this.
And I get it. Like I feel like her reasoning too was like, you know, she doesn't want to put herself back in that space. And she does also say that like she hasn't even really processed the trauma that's happened to her. Yeah. She just kind of like rode this wave of success that she's gotten, and she's putting her whole heart and soul into it. And like, I understand that, but like, it leads to this type of reunion where we're just kind of like getting more of the same. And it lets Lala and Scheana kind of like off the hook. It lets them control the narrative. Even Lala was really confusing in this episode because I feel like she was defending Ariana and putting enough digs at Tom Sandoval so that like Ariana still kind of thought maybe she was on her side. Like I actually found she was acting completely different than the way that we saw her act during the season.
But that's just it. I feel like this entire season she's acted so confusing because she's on Ariana's side, she's on Scheana's side, she's on Katie's side, she's on Tom Sandoval's side, she's on Schwartz's side, she's on Joe's side. Like she's on so many different people's sides, and it's just it's been so hard to watch because we're like, okay, well if you're mad at Ariana, be mad at Ariana and yell at Ariana. Don't do this whole like I'm just gonna like stick up for everybody and like but also apparently just be sticking up for myself and just like talking nonstop. And
it's kind of a Scheana play. Like, it's like, but which is so funny.
But Scheana, at least I feel like we can understand the motivation. We just really can't even understand the motivation here because she like really doesn't even she doesn't care about being liked. She just cares about the job. And yeah.
But that's what's so interesting too, is like, she's literally calling out Katie on not being like basically on being fake and not saying how she really feels when it's like what do you think you're doing? Like
right, thank you. When we find out that Ariana hasn't seen this season, Lala's like, oh amazing, great, love that. But then she's like, I was transparent with you all season, right, Ariana?
Oh my god.
And Ariana was like, yeah, I think you were. And then it's like, no. We know that she was not.
But you know what's funny? I think she both was like happy and sad that Ariana hadn't seen it, because also like at the beginning, Andy was like, oh, like Ariana, now that you've seen how Lala's been interacting with Sandoval, like, does that make you want to take a step back from her? And you could see Ariana kind of processing and being like, do I say that I haven't seen it? She was just kind of like, and then Lala was like, no, like, tell me seriously, like, be honest. Like, how did you feel? And that was Lala being like, yeah, we're like, let's go. Like, how do you feel? Like, I feel like she wanted a big reaction, and then she got like, well, actually I haven't seen it. And then she was like, and swapping narratives, Katie.
Never mind. Yeah, exactly. I think I'm from a purely reality TV kind of viewer perspective, I'm more mad at Ariana about not watching the season than I am about her walking out at the end of the finale, right?
I mean, we're not mad about her walking out at the end of the finale, we're not mad really. Like
for us, like the only chance of us kind of ever getting like a real reaction to what happened this season from Ariana is now like if they magically get a 12th season.
It's true, and
this show
it does kind of it makes me wonder if this is why they're making them all watch the last 6 minutes of the finale together, because they know she hasn't watched. Because at first I was like, this feels like kind of emotional manipulation, like the fact that everyone on this cast other than Ariana knows what happened. Like this fully feels like all they want to do is get a reaction out of her. Like it feels very pointed.
But now it feels like, oh no, that is actually fully necessary. But at the same time, like if like they should have just like paused it right there. They would have been like, okay guys, okay everybody, pause. We're all gonna watch the season together right now. Or we're at least gonna all watch the finale together right now. Let's watch it and let's see what happens. And then we'll resume the reunion after that. That's when they should have done that break.
Yeah, I don't know if they do it at the end. It's just like, what's happening? I also have to imagine Katie has given Ariana a little bit of a heads up here, like hopefully.
I would hope so. But also like the whole thing is like the I don't know anybody who gets cheated on and then suddenly becomes God. Like that was in the trailer. Like Ariana has at least 100% seen the trailer.
That's true.
She was physically there at BravoCon, so it's not like she can't know what happened.
True. I don't think she knows the extent of Scheana. That's probably going to be the one that shocks her the most.
That is probably the harder part. And and then like the whole kind of like emotionalness of the last little sequence where they have the montage of them being young and then old again and that kind of thing.
So with that, let's get into the Katie and Lala fight. So Andy asks, like, you know, what's kind of caused a rift between both of you this season? And Lala essentially says that Katie hasn't been transparent. And then they kind of go, we piece together a story, you know, taken from this, taken from the after show. It's really quick. They go back and forth kind of yelling at each other. I feel like the TLDR of it is that there was a conversation that Katie had with Lala before this season, I guess.
Before the season filmed,
And she must have been like venting a little bit about Ariana, mainly because she was going on Broadway and she didn't really give Katie a heads up.
Oh, actually, that must have been after the season then.
Yeah, so that's why I'm really confused about the timeline of all of this.
Yeah,
but
that's true, but Lala's making it feel like they either knew about Broadway a lot longer before we did, or because you're right, that would be like tomorrow, like that would be like January that Ariana went to Broadway, and it happened so fast.
Yeah, it's really confusing. Regardless of what the conversation was, she did vent that maybe she felt like she was kind of taking on more of the sandwich shop kind of responsibilities at that point. And I don't doubt that happened, but it's really like how Lala is now kind of like weaponizing this conversation of like a friend venting. Basically, it seems like then the other thing that happened was there was a conversation with Lala, Katie, and producer before they went into this season, I guess, when they kind of just talk about the story beats and what's happening in their life. And it seemed that Lala wanted to bring up this conversation and kind of frame it as Katie being angry towards Lala. Oh my God, Ariana. Jesus, what's happening?
No, it's good. And there's just so many people.
Yeah, and Katie was like, well, no, like, I'm over this now. Like, this isn't relevant anymore. Like, why would I bring this up? To which Lala is saying that she felt abandoned by Katie this season.
Yeah.
It's just like, what?
Which is crazy because I feel like Lala was the one that abandoned Katie this season, right? Like, Lala was the one that was so ride or die for Katie last season, and then all of a sudden she comes biffles with Scheana. She becomes biffles with Brock, and she has like no interest in hanging out with Katie or like doing anything with Katie. She's like totally over Katie and like wants to call her miserable.
But it's also just like, how can you say that you felt abandoned by her because she didn't blindly choose to follow you and air out like one thing that maybe she said about Ariana in the past, and she didn't jump on the Sandoval train, which is what Katie says, and Lala's like, I wasn't on the Sandoval train, like I was on the Lala train. It's like, excuse?
Girl, you're on the Sandoval train. I'm sorry, I hate to break it to you, but come on.
100%. I also don't know if you caught too, Lala was like, me and you, to Katie, like, we're truth tellers, and you weren't being truthful. And it's like, what truth were you telling this season? And Katie,
but that's just it. You were being completely two-faced to everyone's back. Like, come on.
I'm so confused by it. And Katie was like genuinely shocked that she's like, what are you talking about? Another reason I feel like not great about this conversation is it just like, what was the point of it on Lala's end? And I feel like she really was trying to drive a wedge between Katie and Ariana and be like, oh, see, like Katie talked bad about you too, and like she said that you didn't pay your rent from the sandwich shop, and like that specifically is like, that's part of Sandoval's story that he's been saying about Ariana, and it's like, are you seriously going to perpetuate that?
So annoyed by that. And I'm also so annoyed that yet again we have, you know, like Tom Schwartz and Tom Sandoval sitting on the other side of this couch, proverbial couch, because they're all in
uncomfortable looking chairs.
Yeah, exactly. tall chairs. And they're just getting away with it, like completely scot-free. Like there's no issues. There's no, like, nothing for them to be held accountable for. I don't even understand why Tom Sandoval and Tom Schwartz are in those chairs if they're not even going to be like addressing anything. Like, what are they doing in those spots? Like, it should be Katie and Ariana in those spots, or Katie and Scheana and Lala in those spots, and like Tom Schwartz and Tom Sandoval should just be like in the back, like next to craft services. Like they're not there doing anything. They're nothing on this show. Like, come on.
No, literally. Especially Schwartz. I feel like all Schwartz is doing is just kind of like trying to explain away Sandoval's behavior, which we're gonna get to after this. But Yeah, this whole exchange was just like so confusing, and it's just so frustrating, and it just kind of shows more of what we've been saying about Lala kind of coming from a place of hypocrisy and trying to produce, and it keeps feeling like she's mad at Katie because she didn't fall in line with the story that they were trying to tell.
Like, it's also, I'm sorry, like, I can't understand why Lala is, because she has this little like fight between her and Tom Sandoval about like grooming and like what that is and whatever, and like I just don't understand why she has more like hate and vitriol towards Katie for this kind of conversation that Katie and Lala allegedly had off season, or off camera, at least maybe during the season, who knows, versus like actually the person that's sitting across from you that like is like actually a bad person, like, and we know that he's a bad person, like, why aren't we going after him? Like, that's what we wanted to see all season. And I know that you're not in the comments and that you're not like all about that, and apparently everybody else is in the comments, but we would love to see you guys go after Tom Sandoval. That is what we want to see. Like, come on.
That's literally what we're here for. And I don't understand. I don't understand.
Robbed.
Yeah, it's just so different from last year too. So this conversation kind of continues to devolve where apparently then there's like, is this like a third component now? Then there was a DM that Katie sent to Lala, basically being like, oh, like you don't need a lawyer. What you need is a therapist. You're a clown.
Yes, yeah.
Which Lala says is about her custody battle, but a lot of people are like, no, she's probably talking about like the send it to Daryl like lawyer stuff. Like, I really doubt that Katie would say that she's a clown in regards to her custody battle. Like,
that seems like quite hurtful. And it's also like, well, then why would you even still want to be friends with this person if that's really what she said to you? You know, maybe they'll release screenshots, maybe they won't, you know, well, maybe we'll just never know. But like, it's all a little bit too random. And just it's confusing with the timing, and it's confusing with the intent. And I don't know, like, maybe Katie said that. We know that Katie has been a rage texter in the past.
That's true. That's very true.
But like, we need more details. Like,
yeah,
if we're gonna go there, let's go there. Like, pull out the poster boards, guys.
Well, this is the other thing, like what you said in a past episode too. It's like, okay, Lala, if you're saying you're a truth teller, like, you've basically been hiding. Like, you've felt a certain way about Katie for a long time, for the entire season. You've clearly been holding on to a certain line that you said in this conversation, which is something about her. It's more like nothing about her. You don't even have a business right now, and this is my business that I support my child on. Which she said in the after show as well. So she felt really good about this line.
Yeah, she really liked it. She's like, that's gonna land.
Yeah. And apparently she's put it in an interview as well. But
maybe she's put on some merch. Nothing about her.
Oh my gosh.
Like her brand new merch as well.
But it's like, you didn't bring any of that up in the season, so why are you allowed to not be real? It's like, you didn't bring up the way that you were feeling about Ariana to her face. You only did it behind her back in confessionals. And you've clearly been festering on this Katie thing.
And like, we did get like a little bit of fighting between Katie and Lala this season, but once again, as you say, like, okay, if you guys are gonna fight, just fight. Like, that's the season is fully capable of having fights. Like, let's do that. Let's do something. Let's do anything other than a Tom Sandoval redemption arc. But no, for some reason, it's this like behind the back, in the after show, on your podcast, literally anything other than like confronting them to their face until the reunion when you're gonna Shanghai them with Scheana.
Well, then there's also like, Lala has said that she's not going to talk about BPR anymore until the end of all three. All three episodes of the reunion. So
Best of luck, Lala.
She said that on her podcast, but then I saw, oh my god, it was so funny. It was like a screenshot. It was like on Lala's Amazon Live called
2 minutes later.
Called like baby products I didn't know I needed. She discusses DMs with Katie.
It's like the SpongeBob meme, like 2 minutes later.
It's just God. Like just constantly talking about this. Apparently she's also said that her back hurts from carrying the season.
Oh my God. If you think that's you carrying the season, Jesus.
I'm like a little concerned at her warped view of reality at this point.
I know.
Like,
and I'm a little concerned, as you said too, right? Like, we saw so much of her in this reunion. It felt like it was her podcast. Like, it just felt like it was such a vehicle for the Lala show. And it kind of makes me wonder, like, maybe the person that we need to not have next season is Lala. Like, this is just not working. This is really bad.
It's true. And you know what makes me think too is like Andy has cut people off at reunions before and everyone just let her talk the whole entire time.
The whole entire time.
So that's why I feel like there's a master, like she's in cahoots with production.
I think so.
Like she's not doing this unprovoked. Some people were like, you know how they were kind of saying that Sandoval, some people are saying that there's a redemption arc, which is what we're seeing, but some people are like, maybe they're just kind of like letting him go off and kind of like ruin his own reputation in what he's doing. They're like, maybe they're doing that to Lala. Maybe they're just like winding her all the way up with this information and knowing she's just gonna go out there and kind of like self-destruct.
Maybe that's very possible. Like they're like, yeah, like this is your Lala show. Go do your Lala show. Like that'll be great. It's gonna be incredible. Everybody's gonna be so pleased.
Like we need you to save the show. Like it's all riding on your shoulders.
If you don't go out there and be as crazy as humanly possible, we're not gonna get a season 12. And then how are you gonna feed your children?
And like not to take any of the onus on her, because obviously these are her actions that she's choosing to have as well. And then to make it even more confusing, in this is all like a 3-minute conversation. Like it's a so really fast.
Short. It's like the last 8 minutes. Maybe of the show.
It is going to carry over into the next episode.
Yeah,
but then she says that a lot of people were living in the comments section, Katie being one of them, and she thinks that they acted accordingly. And then she also says Scheana did and James did.
Yeah,
I think those are the only ones that
Which is so crazy because we feel like James is like the most real person that's like been on this show this season. Like
100%, but also those are all the people who would not jump on the anti-Ariana train and jump on the Tom Sandoval train. So it's like, okay, because they're in the comments and they don't agree, because they don't agree with you, they're living in the comments section.
Yeah,
like,
exactly. There's no way that they just like Ariana, right?
Yeah.
Like
I don't know. I just like, it's just such a cop-out. It's just like such an unfair thing to say.
Yeah.
Especially for Katie.
Yeah. And it's also just like, maybe they can't they have like differing opinions? Can't they think that Tom Sandoval doesn't need the redemption arc that you think that he so desperately needs and that you are so desperately like willing to give him? Like, and it's just, I don't know. I think that Lala sees what Katie and Ariana are doing in particular as like them not living their real life and not living their authentic self. And I think Katie and Ariana, they have both been not fan favorites, right? Like Ariana has been some people's fan favorite, but she hasn't been everybody's fan favorite. And Katie has certainly not been everyone's fan favorite.
She definitely wasn't my favorite for like
I don't think
very long time.
Not a lot of fan favorites for Katie. And so like I just think that Katie of all people, but I think Ariana as well, like is very accustomed to kind of just like being her true authentic self, regardless of whether or not it's going to make her liked. Like that's not what she's about. She's just happening to get a pretty good reception from the audience right now. But I think the audience is also in a different place now than we were 10 years ago when we were first watching the show. And we were all a little bit more misogynistic than maybe we are right now.
Or at least like a little bit more blind to it. Like it's so true. It's like literally these people have never been the favorites. And it's like, can you give them a second?
Yeah.
And like we do know that Scheana will kind of like change. Actually, she'll change her tune kind of just depending on who she's talking to, and she obviously wants to be liked, which is why her stance this season is so confusing. But like I don't think Katie is someone who changes the way that she acts for the audience, and neither is James. Like it's just like it's so unfair. And then also just like again, I feel like the goal of this is just so hurtful. It's like Ariana literally has no one who has backed her other than Katie and James, backed her like unrelentlessly, or like didn't flip-flop. And it's like, why do you want to drive a wedge
why do you need
for
to
those
more
two
away from
people
her?
Like it's just like, what is that going to accomplish? Like I just don't understand why.
That's such a good point, right? Like, and that's just it. Like what does taking things away from Ariana give you? Like, why does that make you feel better about yourself, make you feel like a bigger person? Like, why do you need to knock other people down a peg in order to feel like a bigger, better person or a bigger, better version of yourself?
I think it's because she wants to be like, we all, and she's even said this, she's like, everyone felt this way. Like, everyone felt this way. And if they didn't, and if they're saying that they didn't, then they're lying. Like, you know, like
not necessarily true. And that's just it. Like, I think that we can accept the fact that Katie probably did have this conversation with Lala, and that Katie probably did, air some annoyances and grievances towards Ariana. But I think that that's also, it's actually kind of similar to what, did you catch the Scheana's podcast with Janet from the Valley?
No, I didn't. I just saw the snippets.
Matt guy. So it was really good, and it was really good too because it kind of talked about how, Scheana, like they talk about how at the end of the finale, Tom Sandoval was saying that Ariana has like talked shit about all of these people and whatever, and that she's kind of like, she hates all of you guys, and it's like, whatever. And Janet was basically kind of explaining to Scheana, like, yeah, sometimes you do, you complain to your partner about other people, and it doesn't mean that you actually like hate them or dislike them or anything, but sometimes you just need to like vent to your partner, and that's what you do, and that doesn't mean that you don't love somebody. And it luckily kind of like gave Scheana like maybe hopefully like a little bit more perspective on this situation. And I think that that's probably what was happening here with Katie and Lala as well, right? Katie doesn't have a partner to be able to like curl up in bed with and say like, oh man, I'm so annoyed at Ariana today. Like, I can't believe she did this and she did this. So she went to Lala thinking that that was a safe space for her to be able to like say how she was thinking and feeling. But instead it was Lala, and Lala was like, great, let me take notes. Let me get my tape recorder out. I'm going to bring this up at the reunion. And Lala's kind of shown her true colors in that, instead of just being like, yeah, sometimes there are moments when you're annoyed at your friend, and then 2 seconds later you're like, okay, well, I'm glad I said that. Now I'm over it. And and she thinks that there's no way that Katie could be over it. Katie must just be like pretending that she's fine with it because she wants so desperately for something about her to be successful.
Right? Well, okay, you just made me think of another thing as well, is when like Katie was like, Ariana and I have talked through those things. Like, yes, the only time I was a little frustrated was when she went on Broadway, or maybe it was Dancing with the Stars, if that maybe makes they got more confused. Sense. Yeah, maybe they're just mixing those up. Yeah. But she's like, and we've worked through it. So I didn't want to then go back in time and make myself angry about this all over again. Like, that's fake. So it's just like, no, honestly, to be honest, I don't even, maybe this is unfair, I don't even care what was said in this conversation as far as it relates to the venting. Maybe she did. Yeah. Or like, we do think that she vented, but like, regardless of what was said, I don't fault her for not wanting to carry it over into the show after the moment has passed and bring this back up and turn on a person who has so few people rallying for her anymore, strangely enough. Like, especially
in this friend group, weirdly enough.
Yeah. It's
well, so Katie did actually respond to this in her Instagram, and so if you want, I can read it out really quickly. To just kind of what she wrote. She says, "I'm someone who has suffered from imposter syndrome for as long as I have known myself, hence why I was apprehensive about opening the sandwich shop on my own. So when Ariana was going through not only a world of hurt, but also getting some amazing opportunities, that changed a lot of things during a pivotal time. I was extremely sensitive to what she was going through, but was also very supportive. I was also dealing with immense insecurity about what I could take on and simply didn't want to put that on her. I had an emotional response that didn't feel appropriate bringing bringing to her front door, so I went to where I felt safe, or where I thought was safe. Until I find the appropriate conversation was to have with Ariana. I don't know if I'm reading that wrong or if that was written wrong. Which, of course, I did, and we have had plenty of since." So clearly she is saying, I went to Lala thinking that was a safe space. That was clearly not a safe space. And Ariana and I have talked about it, as you just said. And they've had plenty of conversations since. And we know that that's true because we also know that something about her is actually going to be open next week. And they're posting on their Instagram stories to let us know that that's coming as well.
Finally, which, okay. How weird was it how Lisa was so judgy about something about her? Like, what? She was another one who just seemed like she wanted to not disgrace them, but like just kind of ruin a bit of their reputation.
And this whole thing with like Penny and this like partnership that allegedly Penny was like going to have, like, to think that you would go on, like, okay, you find you're the founder of a company, maybe you're a partner in the company, you know, like they did mention last season in season 10 that they were bringing her on as their COO, I think, chief operational officer. And nowhere in that did they imply that like you were gonna then be a partner because you're coming on in like such a high up position. Like, it's not a guaranteed thing that you just become a partner. Like, there's a lot of people in the world that are COOs that are not partners or like co-founders of institutions, businesses, whatever.
It's so weird. And I feel like, to be fair, Lisa also had a weird response to Schwartz and Sandy's, but that I think was more like they had a restaurant with her and she gave them so many opportunities, the Toms, and then for them to go and open a new one without involving her at all.
Yeah.
She obviously had things to say about that, and I understand that.
Yeah.
But I feel like if she wanted to be involved with something about her, she could have. So I don't understand why she just feels the need to drag them and be like, oh, you could have been open so much longer. Like, it's really just because
if you really put your mind to it.
She's like, but Ariana was doing other things. Like, her too, she's trying to like slander Ariana.
Of course. Even, did you catch the thing when she asked Ariana, because at the very like top of the episode they talked about like to the fact that Tom and Ariana were still living together, and LVP asks Ariana if she's still there. She doesn't turn to Tom Sandoval and say, and are you still there? Because obviously Tom Sandoval's still there, because why would he ever leave? Why would he need to? He didn't do anything wrong.
No. Oh, yeah. Well, speaking of Tom Sandoval, that was the second kind of like narrative that was being pushed at us this episode, which was, so I feel like they just kept lobbing him these questions to set him up to be able to explain himself for, you know, things that have been perceived badly. And I feel like they just kept doing everything in their power to make him look better. And he's just unable to do so.
He is. And I'm sorry, has he always had that weird little, like the little like gap in his two front teeth?
I think he has.
He has that. I just don't even recognize it. Like, I feel like sometimes I see his face and I'm just like, I don't even know who I'm looking at. Like, I feel like you've changed so much.
He has.
In these 10 years.
I feel like Schwartz has changed more than he has.
No, I feel like Schwartz still looks like himself.
Yeah.
I feel like Sandoval, like, I physically don't recognize him. I'm like, that. Like, if you showed me two pictures, I would be like, I don't know who that is.
I mean, his style definitely changes a lot from season to season. Yeah, so they just kept like lobbing these easy questions for him to kind of take back some things that he's done. And I feel like he just kept being like, and then like when they did so, he'd be like, what? Like, you want me to just like give you like a pitch on myself? Like, what do I God? Like, they're like, no, just say literally anything, please.
Yeah, that's just it. And Andy's like literally like giving him like the easiest question. It's like, hey, can you see how maybe comparing yourself to O.J. Simpson and George Floyd was a bad thing? And he's like, no. No, I can't. I was right about that.
He's like, that wasn't what I meant. God.
Oh, God damn. Never gonna get it.
Oh my gosh, it was so bad. And then other people would put the words in his mouth. Then like Lala would be like, do you mean that there were bigger news stories going on and this did not warrant to be up there next to it? And he's like, yeah, that's what I meant.
And then one of the lines that I loved was also like, is it fair to say that you've gotten an incredible amount of backlash? It's like, yeah, Andy, I did get an incredible amount of backlash. Thank you for acknowledging that.
Or like my favorite too was like, what? Oh, I didn't write it down, but it was something along the lines of like, how can you show fans that you have changed, basically? And it's like, the fact that you even need to say that is evidence that he has not shown us that he has changed.
Right.
If you have to ask.
And that's what kind of confuses me too, because in the little midst of this kind of conversation, about halfway through this episode, they have this like montage of just kind of like all the times that Tom Sandoval was like an awful person.
I did appreciate that.
I did appreciate that too, but that's why once again I'm just like confused by but like what production's trying to do, what Andy's trying to do, what the editors are trying to do. Like, I feel like we're just like seeing different things because they're like, I don't know how to cobble this together. Let's just see this and see the hopefully they like it. I don't know.
To be honest, this is a time where I would love them to break the fourth wall so hard that they literally tell us the timeline of when these things were filmed, when they were edited, who edited them, what the direction was. Yeah, because to your point, like, it almost feels now like they're being like, oh wow, that didn't get received the way we thought it would, the whole Sandoval redemption arc. Maybe we should like put in some things of Sandoval being awful, or like show his hot mic at the end of the season where he's like, oh, that was great for me.
That was great for
so
me.
That maybe we can hedge our bets a little. Like, what's like, is it, or are we overthinking this?
No, I think I do kind of feel like you're right. Like, I do think that there's a little bit of like hedging their bets kind of happening here, where they're like, well, we can't pretend that he's 100% a saint, but we can at least try to give him the redemption arc that he needs to be able to set us up for success for next year. And that's the best that they've been able to come up with. But
do you think they're putting this in after they've seen fan reactions, or do you think it was put together like this from the beginning? Like, that's what I want to know.
I don't think that they would have changed it, right? Because they said last year that they didn't change any of the season after season 10 had already like been filmed and edited and cut together. So I don't think that they would have changed this season either. But yeah, I do really think that like anything that they were sending back to Bravo headquarters and being like, hey, this is kind of where the story direction's going, like they were just kind of cobbling together the season,
that's true,
the best that they could.
And now also, after what Lala was saying about the conversation that like her, Katie, and production had, it also makes me want to know more about how that works, because I'm just like so confused by it. Like,
what do you mean?
Like, did they just call up Lala and Katie and be like, hey, like, what are you guys feeling? Like, what are the main things happening in your life that's like gonna help us like storyboard a bit of this season? Like, is that what that conversation was? Like, I want to be brought in on the process. Reality Bites, can you help us?
Can you let us know? Well, based on the very limited amount of information that I have about this, I guess it does kind of depend on like when in the season that conversation did actually occur. Because if it is before the season filmed, then we know that they do kind of have those like sit downs with them, right? Where
that's
like,
what Lala's saying.
So if it's that case, then like I guess that they were together doing their storyboards for season 11. They're like, okay, well, this is what's going on in my life, and this is what's going on.
They're like, hey, so everyone hates Ariana, and
but the thing is, I cannot believe that that's where the season started, because I think that could only have happened after they started filming the season. Because the first episode of this season was a completely different season than what we ended up watching. Like, the directions are completely different.
That's so true, because Lala called Raquel. I think they were setting up Raquel to come back, and I feel like that threw everything off.
Yeah. I think they should have waited until they knew whether or not she was coming back to film this season.
I mean, we've said before, I think they should have waited, period.
They should have waited, period, but at least, I think like waiting until they knew if she was coming back would have made so much more sense with their direction in all of this. Because they have just had, like, I feel like they had like 3 to 4 seasons in this season.
Yeah, it was so janky. It was like there's no cohesion. It was just like so confusing.
Yeah. Actually, I'm calling it. There's 4 seasons in this season. I'm putting my flag down now. There's 4 seasons in this one season.
What are they?
Season 1 of or season 11 episode, or part 1, I'll say, is episode 1. Season 11 part 2 is basically everything around the Tahoe trip, when they were like, oh, let's bring Tom Sandoval back, like bring him into the friend group, but we don't like him.
Right.
Season 11 part 3 is anything around the Tori storyline.
Oh my gosh.
When they were just like, let's throw that in. Let's bring in some new cast of characters, see if that helps. And then season 11 part 4 is when they had decided to abandon that storyline and then wrap up the season in San Francisco.
It's true. They never went back to so many of the things that they started planting.
So many things they were like, just drop that, whatever. Like, Tom Sandoval did Scream Therapy one episode. Like, just drop that, whatever. Just keep on moving, guys.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. Well, one of the other things that came out of this episode too, which I think was kind of in Tom's favor, is like they just kind of introduced Rachel Raquel as being a bit of a scapegoat.
Yes.
To be fair, she does not do herself any favors when she, put out that lawsuit against Ariana.
Yes.
Don't like, I feel like we covered a bit of her podcast. At first we were like, oh, there seems to be growth there. And then she did that. And now you're just again like, I can't condone that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's just it. Like, I think as soon as that lawsuit came out, I was like, okay, no, I'm actually going to stop listening to this podcast.
Yeah.
And
I haven't listened since that one attempt.
Yeah.
It felt like it was doing something and then I don't.
It was going in a direction, which is funny because that's what we said about season 10 at the beginning as well, right? Like season 10, we were like, oh, good for Raquel. She's getting out there.
Naive hopefulness.
She's flirting. She's trying to figure out who she is as a single person. And then we were like, oh, wait a minute. Nope, never mind.
Those are the times when you're like, oh my gosh, we said that. We said that on camera.
We said that.
Regret. I mean, how are we to have known? But
we had no chance of knowing. We didn't know what was coming.
No.
Ariana didn't know. We couldn't know.
Yeah. But basically, obviously Lisa's super angry at Raquel. She's talking about the show. She's trashing the show. She's kind of like, and it seems like she doesn't totally have her story straight either. So like, it's just like, no one here is a, what's it called? Something narrative.
Reliable narrator.
No one is a reliable narrator.
No.
Except for Ariana. I trust her. But like with the Raquel thing. But again, it was just kind of like a way for Tom Schwartz, who probably was also keeping this in his back pocket, to be like, Tom Sandoval. Tom Sandoval. Oh my God, I'm tired. I'm so sorry. It's been such a long day. It's been such a long week. Sandoval to be like, she's a coward. Like, she didn't come back and she didn't face it. She left me here and now she's going on her podcast and she's saying all these things about how I manipulated her. And it's like, no, that's actually the one part that we could get behind and what she's saying is understanding the complexity of your relationships. Yeah.
I'm annoyed that it was just kind of like an opportunity for Tom Sandoval to kind of be like, look, I came back, I faced the music, I did the good thing, I did the honorable thing. And she's a bad meanie for not doing that, not coming back, not like trying to be part of the group anymore, not torturing Ariana.
Yeah. Oh my God. Or when they're like, they're talking about, who pursued her, who or whatever. Schwartz is like, she was equally conniving and ruthless in her pursuit of pleasure.
Right. It's like, oh my God, sir.
Did you not just have a flashback to him saying over and over and over again how Raquel was like a drug and Tom Sandoval was ruthless in his pursuit of pleasure?
Oh my God. See, that's interesting because when Tom Schwartz said that, all I could actually think about is the fact that like Tom Schwartz spent all of last season being like, wow, I feel like I'm sticking it to the man by making out with Raquel and like screw Katie and her feelings. She's the worst. She's a garbage human being. How dare she set up boundaries for me, even though I accepted them at the beginning, and now that it's not convenient for me anymore, I am going to go across those boundaries.
Yeah. No, I remembered it because it's like many Schwartzisms, such like a weird way of phrasing something.
Yeah. Like so unnecessary.
But he said it so many times and he used this again. And also, I'm sorry, did you just totally tell on yourself that you actually did know about the affair?
Right? Come on. And also, like, just the fact that, like, once again, like, Raquel is like treated as if she's the scapegoat, she's the mistress, she's the the person that seduced Tom Sandoval, and you know, it was her problem, it was her doing this, it wasn't, he had no act in it, you know, he's not that responsible, guys, we should go easy on him.
To quote him, I did write this one down, I was very impressionable when she took her clothes off and jumped in my pool.
Oh my god.
Sir, like you are not going to spin this as you were the sad, poor, impressionable one.
I was just sitting at home, twiddling my thumbs, waiting for Ariana to come home, and then all of a sudden,
just aggressively berate me with her words and tell me I'm a dum-dum.
Exactly. Kills me. Yeah. These men, they've gotten away with it for so long, and they'll continue to get away with it.
I mean,
nobody wants to hold them responsible.
This season has shown that they're going to get away with it forever. It's literally, it's never going, if there was ever a season for there to be justice and for the boys to be held accountable, it was this freaking season. And they totally ruined it.
Could have had the Spice Girls. Instead, we had this.
I do have to give an honorable mention to Scheana. I do think I liked her stance in this episode. We might eat our words next week, but
we might.
I think she held her ground a little bit towards Sandoval and stuck up for Ariana.
I think one thing that I like to go back to the Shenanigans podcast that happened last week with Janet and Matt. I do feel like one thing that got like kind of like pointed out to Scheana was the fact that she kind of like, it felt like Scheana was a little bit like in like an echo chamber of like this whole thing with Lala, right? Like Lala and Scheana were probably talking about the show and talking about the show and talking about the show and talking about the show, and how like, Ariana was like, how could she walk out on us, and how could she walk out on us, and how could she do this to us? And like I think that like she got kind of like caught up in that like tailspin, that kind of like whole experience, and didn't actually like get the opportunity to hear about Ariana and what Ariana might be experiencing from a different person other than maybe Tom Sandoval, maybe Brock, maybe Lala. Like, did
she say this in the podcast, or that's
what Janet kind of like, Janet and Matt, I feel like, helped her kind of like see how like, no, like, you know, that was an authentic thing for Ariana to do and for her to walk out, and that was a good thing. And Scheana talks about how in the moment they felt like it was like a slap in the face for her to like walk out and leave them behind and not finish the season with them. And it kind of feels like, you know, and I guess she doesn't like say explicitly that it feels like Lala and Scheana were kind of like, you know, spinning themselves together and talking about how that was a slap in the face for them to experience that
slap
from
in
Ariana.
Slap in the
face. But
sorry.
No, I love that. I think about that all the time too. It's my favorite. And so I think that, like, you know, Scheana, because she was able to kind of acknowledge that and hear what Janet and Matt were saying in that episode last week, it kind of makes me feel like there is a little bit of hope for Scheana in kind of a way that maybe I don't really necessarily feel like I have like a lot of hope for like Lala at this point. Like,
that's it. It's gonna be interesting to see what they both say moving forward. It is kind of unfortunate that production is being pushed now, because it's like I kind of want to see what happens now. I mean, I'm sure they're still gonna talk about it all live long day on their podcast, but it's like up until now Lala has not changed her narrative one bit, whereas already Scheana's starting to change hers. I don't think it lets her get away scot-free, and I think she's going to have to do a lot of groveling. I also saw that Lala, in one of her probably Amazon Lives, because now she can only talk about it in Amazon Live, and not her podcast, she said that she like barely even talks to Sandoval, and that like her and Sandoval were never friends and never tight. And it's like, why did you do this to us?
It doesn't surprise me at all. And yet you're on the after show talking about how Tom Sandoval was always the connector of the group, and he was always the one coming with plans for you guys. Like, come on.
Why did you do this to us? Like, why?
You did this for the cheap like thrill. You did this for like the immediate return and like not the long-term investment. Like,
but the immediate return was not at all paying off.
but that's just it. She thought that it was. She thought that this was the thing that would get them through to next season, and it was not. This was a bad investment. It was just like
a gross miscalculation.
It was a huge miscalculation.
One last thing. Some people are saying that they think on the last episode of this reunion, Ariana's going to say she's not coming back from the show.
I don't think so. I don't think Ariana invests in a home in LA and like invests in something about her and continues to kind of like live in LA without the intention that she'll be on this show. Like, would you really walk away from this show?
True. And I also don't think that they would announce that at a reunion. Like, what would that do? It would be like, and
by the way, everybody, I'm not coming back next season. That's what you do when you don't show up to the reunion. That's how you tell people that you're not coming back next season. LVP would know about that. And yeah, I don't know. I think that I hope that Ariana comes back next season. I hope they all come back next season. I do hope that they kind of like find a way. I guess I say that. I don't know about Lala. TBD about Lala.
Imagine she's like friend of.
I don't think that's a bad thing though, right? Yeah. Like I think that sometimes that's what you need. Like, and like, you know, we've talked about her being kind of similar to like Lisa Rinna. Like I think maybe like
she needs a pause.
Maybe she needs a pause. Maybe she needs a little time off.
She also loves Lisa Rinna. She posts about her constantly and her like terrifyingly shape-shifting daughters.
Yeah. Oh boy. Yeah. It's not great. Yeah. But anyways, I guess we'll just have to wait and see.
We'll just have to see where else
we don't get much choice in the
where it'll take us. I don't really know what's coming. I'm not super excited for the next 2 episodes.
No.
I mean, this one was the filler. I just want to get it over with. Yeah. This one was clearly filler, so hopefully there's more substance next week.
If there really is 3 episodes, I feel like next week's gonna be filler too, right? Like
really?
Until we get Ariana and Lala actually just like fighting with one another, like that is all filler. As far as I'm concerned. Because we know we're not going to get any other fighting. Or maybe we will.
I mean,
I'd love to be surprised.
Yeah. Well, let us know what you think.
Yeah. How did you like the reunion?